Welcome everybody. This is our third in our series of webinars. So the kids and family marketing sessions. Really pleased to have you all join us today. My name is Maurice Wheeler. I am the Managing Director here at We Are Family. We are Europe's leading kids and family marketing agency network. I am part of a double act. I am joined in Spain by my colleague Borja.
Hi,
hello there. I see, Borja, that in Spain they've lifted lockdown because you've had a haircut since we last spoke.
It's true. I was looking for it during the last weeks. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. Borja here. I'm the Managing Director at Fulmin Spain, an agency specialized in kids, teens, and families. Such amazing and challenging topic that we have today. What's next for education? We will see how society is experiencing these tricky times and how brands can support and add value to their new reality.
So we record these sessions and we're beginning to release them out on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch them again, or probably more likely share them with your colleagues, then we'll send that link round a little bit later. So you've got access to that. We're going to be talking for about 40 minutes. We've got a great panel, which we'll introduce to you in a second. If we will be leaving on the screen the questions that we'll be asking, so you can see what we're talking about. Some people would rather see our faces while we're talking, in which case just use the Zoom interface to click on us so that we become bigger and you can see us talking if you would rather do that.
So coronavirus turned thousands of families into accidental homeschoolers, and they're not looking back. So those who are not in the education field, please let me introduce some general features. The global education community is living the uncertain, so not only considering schools and teachers, but the kids and families. They've never seen this close and yet this far. Most governments around the world have temporarily closed educational institutions in an attempt to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. So according to UNESCO numbers, there is a 1.2 billion affected learners and their families, obviously, because of this pandemic. Also, if we attend to or regarding regular pre-COVID homeschooling, that this is legal in many countries, and even if it's not, or legal or not, numbers say that in Spain are around 4,000 families, in France 6,000 families, in Germany 400, in UK around 60 families that do a standard or a pre-COVID homeschooling. So imagine what this new landscape will bring forward.
We have three incredible panelists joining us today. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to start by introducing Leon Smith, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Twinkl. Twinkl are a multi-award winning global education resource platform. So hello and welcome, Leon.
Hello, thanks for having us. I apologise that my background isn't working, but yes, happy to be here, thank you.
We also have Dr. Benny Pock from Kett Mint, an education communication agency in Germany. Hello, Dr. Benny. Dr. Benny Pock.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. Is my background okay, or should I switch it off?
No, it looks great. And then finally, Jo. Thanks, Jo. Jo Redfern manages the commercial brand activity at the BBC for Children's and Education.
Hello, thanks Mo, thanks Borja. It's nice to be here. Looking forward to it.
Hello. So as I mentioned, the entire educational space has been flipped on its head. Parents have become teachers, and teachers need to find the material that works at home. Starting with you, Leon, what are the sort of trends that you've seen in the demand for your content, both here and around the world?
Yeah, well, it's safe to say that it's been an interesting couple of months, definitely, and we've seen our you know, our entire customer base completely flip and demand coming from lots and lots of different areas. You know, I think for teachers, they're looking for resources that they can send home to parents, that are easy for parents to pick up, to follow, and that they're pitched at the right level for the pupils. I think we've seen an increase in demand for digital solutions as well, so lots of apps and games and activities that can be done, but then also activities that can be done without a device or without a printer as well. So the demand has been, you know, quite varied. And I think for teachers that are still in school as well, we've seen a lot of demand for mixed stage planning as well. For parents in particular, I know a lot of parents have kind of been looking for the right way to structure their children's days. You know, they often have more than one child at home, and they're looking for a mix of curriculum-based activities or even fun activities, because some parents are even looking for structure at the weekends as well. We're definitely seeing demand for the basics. You know, we did a large survey on site, and lots of parents are looking for the literacy activities, maths activities, science, those basics, but then they're also looking for those other curriculum activities as well to kind of achieve that broad coverage of topics. I guess we noticed with our customer base that lots of parents didn't really know where to start. A lot were overwhelmed. There was a lot of choice. And they really needed a lot of support and guidance in helping them in this new, you know, this new approach, this new situation they found themselves in. So, I mean, what we did at Twinkl was to create a home learning hub, which is effectively a timetable of activities that can be picked up for any age child, that cover all different subject areas. And there's been a huge uptake. You know, we've seen visits to that page be, you know, enormous since we launched it. So there's definitely that need from our customers. I think internationally, you know, we've got resources that are aligned to lots of different curriculums, different languages. We've seen a big sort of uptake in different areas. Ireland has been huge for us, Poland, Romania, and lots of European countries. I think the approach that different countries are taking is very different, because lots of them have different, you know, different ways of teaching remotely, different demands on the teachers for teaching remotely. We've also seen a lot of dual language resource requests as well. So particularly in the areas where we've got lots of international private schools, you know, that they generally teach the English British national curriculum, and we're seeing lots of demand from parents for dual language resources, so they can continue to support the children with the curriculum subjects, but also doing it in their native language as well.
Leon, sorry, did you say that you had an increase in like mental well-being resources as well?
That's right, yeah. So I mean, there's been sort of larger searches across the board for mental health and wellbeing resources as well. Lots of you know, we provide resources to help children to understand the coronavirus, how to help them understand the situation, how to talk to them about it. We've got a collaboration with Mind. You know, we're doing watch parties, videos, because we are seeing, you know, both for teachers, parents, and pupils, an increase in the demand for sort of mental health and wellbeing resources at this time, which is, you know, to be expected.
Jo, from what you've seen, obviously we had Leon mentioned there the requirement for mental health resources in this, you know, particularly in this time. From what you're seeing at the BBC, you know, you guys have had to create a lot of new content that has helped educate children around the virus and around lockdown. What has been your experience, and how have you approached this as far as creating new educational content about a new topic such as Corona?
I think alongside the big responsibility that was taken on by my colleagues at BBC Bitesize in terms of formal education support, and they've worked with various partners, including Twinkl, on that, there's also been a huge sense of responsibility within BBC Children's for the messaging and the output across our TV channels, so CBeebies and CBBC, and what we do online too. So, of course, when lockdown was announced, there was a huge amount of uncertainty amongst families, and so many of them looked to the BBC as a trusted source of information and support. But it wasn't just the grown-ups looking for news or for entertainment that perhaps offered escapism from this crazy situation we're all in, but they always also wanted reassurance, and reassurance is really important for young families at what is essentially quite a frightening time for us all. So a huge amount of planning started to refine the balance of content across all of our BBC children's platforms. So that's the balance between keeping a familiar schedule on CBeebies, as Leon just referenced. We know the importance of routine, particularly for preschoolers, but also refining the messaging within other show brands so that we can keep our audience informed as well as educated and entertained during lockdown. So it's getting a new balance right within our new normal, and that was a big objective. So for older audiences on CBBC, for example, we started thinking about how we could best answer all their questions. Their inevitable questions about what was happening, to give them a voice in the best way possible, a news round, and our digital wellbeing content has done fantastically well on that score. But also for our preschool audience, we also thought about how we might help them deal with the ups and downs just of families being stuck at home. So almost immediately, what was great is that our talent, they're our secret weapon, if you like, and a lot of our talent got in touch and asked how they could help. And we've got a wonderful roster of presenters, and they've been a real huge asset for us. They've got years of experience in delivering content to kids. So Children's has commissioned some quick turnaround content with familiar faces. Dr. Rand, you might have seen, we've got Mr. Tumble, the Operation Ouch doctors, Dr. Chris and Dr. Zand, and they're helping us achieve this. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all COVID related content. What we're very keen to do as a broadcaster is reflect our young audience's lives back at them. So whilst it's been vital to talk about coronavirus in some situations, it's also important that we reflect the fact that we're all at home in content. So we've got Mr. Tumble making kids laugh from home with his jokes and just being Mr. Tumble. We've got Mr. Maker at home showing kids how to get creative with supplies found around the house. And excitingly for me, we've got Oti Mabuse from Strictly, who's going to be teaching our Boogie Beabies some dance routines. So it's been that change, that pivot towards reassuring and informing our audience that's underpinned a lot of what we've done.
Interesting, Jo. Thank you so much. Benny, when you look at your business, how has that changed? You also provide online resources, but also provide a lot of offline educational resources to museums, for example, or can you talk us through what you've seen change over the last 2 months and how are you reacting to stay ahead?
Well, I think at the start of the lockdown, like many institutions, many publishers were just starting online platforms, and gathering resources for a homeschooling context. And we've just seen an explosion of content in platforms for this scenario. So a lot of them were for sale, a lot of them were free. And I think now, some teachers, have a lot of resources at hand, and the task is more to filter through these link lists and find what is really appropriate to your particular situation. And in terms of formats, what we've seen in this first stage of the lockdown was that there is a high interest in worksheets, curriculum-based worksheets that allow you to make progress, straightforward, clear-cut content that works without an instruction period, where a teacher is in the classroom. I think also video tutorials are in high demand, particularly in subjects like maths and language learning, also take away the classroom setting. And if you have tailor-made video tutorials, then that is a big help in that kind of setting. What has been particularly interesting for my company and also challenging is the fact that we do a lot of conferences and not webinars, this is what we do now, but teacher trainings. And of course, this is something we couldn't realize over the past few weeks. And we have, like you have, changed to webinars. We do a lot of webinars now. I see it among a lot of publishers. We see the benefits of this format, particularly in this kind of situation, because a lot of teachers are at home. We can get into a conversation with them. There's a lot of feedback, so we find out what they're occupied with at the very moment, and this is changing basically on a weekly basis at the moment, and we can also react quite quickly to those kinds of needs. Like the next week or in 2 weeks, we can do a new webinar to this kind of topic. So I think this kind of challenge has led to kind of a proliferation of new formats that fit this kind of scenario. What is also interesting, we not only look at schools, we also look at extracurricular activities. We work with a lot of museums and science centers, and of course they were particularly stricken by this lockdown because they had to close down, and even if they can open up now, school trips won't go to museums or science centers in a long time. So for example, one of our clients, we basically transferred the workshops that students would usually do in the museum to an online setting, so they can go through the content through videos and through challenges, quizzes, that can also be played within the class. So basically students can play against each other, but this can be also done by an individual student in their free time. Yeah, so I think it's been particularly interesting, especially in those areas where you have to bridge the gap, where kind of the physical environment and physical encounter is fundamental, and it's been taken away, and there's been a lot of creativity gone into that field.
Leon, you've had a similar thing with some of the partners that you worked with, who have relied on a physical location to do their education, and you've supported them with that. I mean, how have you managed with that, with the lack of physical locations in some of your educational resources now?
Yeah, I suppose people are having to be a bit more creative, aren't they? And excuse me, innovative in the way that they are engaging with with their audiences. So we've seen a lot of increase in live streams and virtual tours and things like that. And I suppose I'd echo what Benny said, that we've also seen that kind of demand for that experiential learning as well. So it's been a really good opportunity for us to look at how we can collaborate even better with our sort of existing partners to bring that sort of content to the home. So we've done a lot of work with, for example, with Merlin. They've done some live streams of penguins and turtles, and people have absolutely loved them, and we've been able to create the resources, the supporting resources with that, so we can show people, direct people to these wonderful experiences, and then we can also follow it up with some really high quality learning materials as well. Similarly, we've got something with the Eureka Children's Museum as well, and we're just trying to collaborate as much as possible. There are lots of different ways. There's AR models that have been absolutely huge that we've seen on social media. There's Google ones, there's Twinkl ones, there's lots, and it's kind of bringing the learning into your home, bringing that, just making it a bit more real for people, I think has been really nice to see. But I think overall the collaboration element has just been vital with this. Like Jo mentioned, we've been working with BBC Teach, BBC Education, go-getters, taking what's already their high quality, content, and just working together, sharing that expertise to provide those, even richer learning experiences, I think.
Benny, you work with a range of companies, government bodies, foundations, and helping them provide learning resources. Have their demand changed? Do you see what they are looking for from a company such as Kett? Also, do you see the sort of organizations that want to support educational resources for parents changing?
Well, first of all, I think everyone was at a complete loss at the beginning of this Corona crisis, because no one really prepared for a pandemic from a content standpoint. And so, of course, what I think is the common denominator for all activities is that online formats are really much in demand, and particularly talking about German schools, we don't have a very good infrastructure at the moment in terms of digital equipment in schools. So it came down to the teachers, and also to now comes down to foundations, to government authorities to kind of provide solutions for the lack of this kind of infrastructure. So, there's a lot of conversation going on about addressing these needs. And also, I think, we've a lot of clients or institutions that we work with, we're just kind of in a dialogue. They seek advice from us to find out about the situation in schools. As I said, it's kind of changing on a weekly or monthly basis. For example, at the moment schools are reopening or have been reopening in Germany. So all of a sudden, keeping hygiene standards, and organizing the flow of students coming into school is an issue that needs to be organized and it needs to be addressed, and that if you have proper contact, it will meet a basic need. Also, I think in all kinds of strategies for new products that would have gone to schools directly, to teachers, at the moment, parents are also a part of the calculus all of a sudden. How do products have to be created? If part of the, say, instruction is taken over by the parents or part of the learning process is done at home. For example, what I find quite fascinating, we have in Germany one professional basketball club, Alba Berlin, and they do a daily tutorial on working out at home, and it's recommended by a lot of schools for students to keep working out, exercising at home. This is not something that would have come into the picture under regular circumstances, like a basketball club, taking part of the PE sessions, kind of. So I think, that kind of demand is definitely there. Another issue, that's not directly connected to this, but that's kind of fundamental to this homeschool setting, and that I think a lot of companies and institutions will have to address is kind of the widening gap between students who work from home. We have, of course, a lot of well-educated, well-off parents that have all the financial resources to buy materials or to buy digital tools to have access for their kids. But we also have a large group of students that don't have this kind of access and that don't have this kind of support, and they might share a smartphone with their brothers and sisters, and this is how they get access to the materials that they have to do for school. And this will be a challenge when students return to school. How do you address this kind of gap? And also, given the perspective that we will have, I think, an extended period of time where students at least partly learn from home, how do you make sure that they, are basically equipped to make progress when they're at home?
Just a quick note to participants, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function and we can ask some of those at the end. So if you've got any questions, please do put those in. Jo, coming to you, you have worked with, for example, Newsround, which is a British kids news service. You worked with Operation Ouch, which is obviously very much about medical procedures. You worked with Dr. Ranj, again, very medical. All of those, part of their DNA is about educating children and educating children about medical issues. Can any brand kind of start talking about corona or start talking about pandemics, or actually, is there a role that certain brands just can't do that and shouldn't do that?
I think it would be foolish to think that each and every brand that sits within BBC Children's, for example, should address the pandemic. And I think actually parents and families would soon grow tired of that, or even grow to resent that message if it was adopted across the board. Particularly presenters that you've just referenced, like the doctors in Operation Ouch, that's their job. But actually other presenters, their job is to simply make kids laugh, for example. So for me, at times like this, it's vital for any brand to have an honest dialogue with its audience, with the kids and families, and brands need to stay true to themselves. So authenticity is a word often bandied around, but it's more important than ever if the context within which that brand operates has changed, so like the pandemic. So for our audience, certainly it's just as important to continue to entertain them make them laugh. We all still need to laugh. So actually force feeding or shoehorning on a coronavirus message where it isn't necessarily relevant, I think would be counterproductive, and for us, more likely to make viewers switch off. But as you mentioned, we do have very important brands in our stable, such as Operation Ouch, and we've got our digital wellbeing app, which is called Own It, and Newsround that you mentioned, that are brands perfectly placed to give that information to our audience, and that's in a way that they understand. It's in a way that gives them a voice too. So Newsround, if I can talk about Newsround for a moment, for me that's been a brilliant example of how a news brand has put its audience at the centre of what is one of the biggest news stories for a generation, and it's one that's a fast-moving story at that. So I asked the production team yesterday how they tackled it, and they said that the priority for them from late January, at a time when newspaper headlines included phrases like "killer bug heading for UK," was to keep it simple, to keep it factual, and them knowing how kids need to know everything now, their first piece was coronavirus, everything you need to know. And that's been regularly updated since. And the key thing for them was that it contains more positive language as opposed to the fearful or the sensationalist words that were being used elsewhere. So they limited the use of the word death. There was no death count in numbers. And there were also explainers. What is a pandemic? How do vaccines work? All really important stuff to our audience. And other things like galleries of the rainbow artwork that children had sent in to give them a sense of connection because they were all isolated. Right down to things like practical tools for kids that distill the macro global situation that's quite hard to process for kids down to that local personal level. And one in particular that chimed with me was on the BBC Own It website, and there's a whole raft of content for kids about managing parents, and I thought that was brilliant because there is a whole new dynamic within families, and our children, as much as us grown-ups, need help in navigating the tensions of us all being cooped up together for such a long time.
Benny, finally, what does life look like beyond the lockdown? What's the legacy of COVID-19 and the whole education industry from your point of view?
That's a big question, I can't really look into the future, just like virologists can only look into their particular field. But it's all, of course, interesting to speculate, and of course we can see some things already happening in Germany because the lockdown has been eased, and I think one result will be that digitization will receive a huge boost. Even though everybody's yearning to come back, to have this social experience in school and to also gather at conferences and so on and so forth. I think people will have just adopted a lot of tools. Infrastructure will make progress, and I think so. Digital products, also in school, in a school context, will be more important. Also, if you look at the situation that we're going to have, as I said, some classes will return partly, they will be in school for some days, and then the other half of the class might come to school and then take lessons. So we will have a lot of asynchronous kind of learning that can also be managed with digital tools, but we also have a lot of teachers who won't be able to return to schools for a long time because they have pre-existing conditions or they're a little bit older. So they're not allowed to return, but they will have to remain in this kind of remote learning scenario for a longer period of time. They need support just as much as kids and parents need support who learn in this kind of situation. And I think also particularly, there's so many interesting offers out there, from the BBC. We have channels in Germany, like my kids watch, and they know more about the coronavirus than I do afterwards. And I think this can work in a lot of fields, and this can be of big support. So I think, taking parents and personal backgrounds into consideration, and differentiating between these different kind of target groups among parents is kind of key, and is like a big challenge for us to manage the upcoming situation.
Leon, same question to you, I guess. What are you seeing the legacy of the lockdown? What do you think is going to be the things that stay? And I guess, in the same way, what may be some of the things that you hope will stay?
Well, I suppose like Benny said there, we've obviously had an announcement this week around pupils in England returning to school. So our next challenge is to, I guess, support the teachers in schools and parents throughout that transition and what the next few weeks holds sort of for the summer holidays. I think more broadly, the parents have had to become more engaged with their children's learning, and I think now parents are more informed and engaged than ever, and hopefully that will continue. I think that there's been a newfound appreciation for teachers, educators, which has been it's been fantastic to see, because we know the amazing job that they do, but also it's really highlighted the value of the school community, and I don't think anyone will take for granted, that walk to school or doing the 5 minutes reading homework or whatever it is, that's been really nice to see. I think like Benny said, the sort of value of digital literacy is really highlighted, and the importance of these skills and how children are going to need them moving forward. And I guess in contrast to that, the understanding about how learning takes place, how education takes place across lots of different formats, the other things like baking and shopping, and helping parents to feel more confident in weaving this into to everyday life at home, which has been really nice. So and for us as a business, I guess it's been really interesting for us to understand the different needs of our customers, the different customer segments that we have, how we can best support teachers, how we can best support parents, and just a greater understanding so we can basically provide a better offering for them.
And finally, Jo, what about you? What's your opinion about the legacy of COVID-19?
Like Benny, when you first asked me to consider this question, it seemed such a huge question to consider, never mind try and find an answer. But then I got to thinking, and not unlike Leon, I think there'll be a blurring of boundaries between what the education industry does and its consumers. And by that, I don't just mean kids. So I mentioned to Maurice earlier, for me as a parent, previously the thought of homeschooling my children petrified me. And frankly, that was a job far better left to teachers. And whilst that's still definitely the case, I harbour no ambition to be a teacher. My confidence in being more of an educator, albeit a supplementary educator to my kids, is much higher now, because I've been forced to seek out resources. I've grown in confidence over the last couple of months using resources like Bite Size or Twinkl. So that got me wondering whether we might see a similar change to what has happened within broadcast over the last few years, where fragmentation has characterized entertainment. So consumption of content moving away from the TV in the corner in a very defined environment to content being created for multi-platform distribution. So often different pieces of content relating to the same TV show are created and delivered on different platforms like YouTube or short form via mobile. So I did wonder whether, whilst education will still continue to be delivered in the main by educators and institutions, I wonder if it will expand out from there more readily into home via parents like me with a newfound confidence in adding to their kids' education, and also using other types of educational content and with new modes of delivery like mobile.
That actually kind of seamlessly goes into one of the questions that we have from Italy. So the question's probably slightly more towards Leon here, and the question is, do you think there'll be an increase in families choosing to homeschool, or do you think families are looking forward to sending their kids back?
Well, we've definitely seen a mix of responses to that, I guess, amongst our customer base. We've got a really large and strong home ed community within Twinkl, And, you know, just from our social groups and our social communities, we've seen an increase in, you know, the number of people who are wanting to join that group, who are wanting to look at home education for a number of different reasons. And whether that be because they don't want to send their child back to school for safety reasons, or because, you know, they've really enjoyed this experience and they think that it's something that they would like to adopt themselves. So there's lots of reasons why people might be making the choices that they are. And I guess similarly, we've also seen lots of parents who have said, if I ever see another worksheet in my life, it'll be too soon. So, you know, we've got a huge, I guess, a huge different response to the situation as is. But yes, I mean, definitely we have seen an increase in people asking questions, becoming interested in the home education approach.
Great, thank you. And actually, sorry, one more question. I think we've got time for one more coming in from Turkey, which is kind of following on from your point, Jo, which is, do we now think that, they use a word that can make some people wince, do you now think we are going to see more edutainment content, considering that parents are finding education a more important thing to do at home?
I think probably yes. That was a genre that was most popular a good few years ago, and I can see edutainment being a word that enjoys a renaissance, certainly where content for kids is concerned. I think that brings with it a certain amount of, but it makes me feel a little bit uneasy in that you can't attach the word entertainment to every piece of content that's created and expect it to stack up. And going back to that word authenticity again, I think kids and families and the audience will soon see through that if content is purported to be educational when actually it isn't. And going back to something that Leon said, inherently education can be taken from a lot of different kinds of content. So for me, I think, yes, there will be a lot more educational content pitched and perhaps created, and some of it might be outstanding. But actually, you know, staying true to what your content is just as important as claiming it has educational value. Kids learn through watching baking shows and enjoy that too. So I think, I think we will see an increase in it, but it's to be taken with care, I think.
Thank you, everyone, so much for your time. Really appreciate that. I've found it thoroughly enlightening. I hope you have too. We would love participants who have been listening in. We would love your feedback. So please help us improve these sessions. We've got 3 more sessions coming, so we want to make sure that we continually get better. So everyone would have received an email from me letting you know that the session is going to start in an hour. So please reply to that email with any feedback, anything that you want to share as far as helping us understand how to make these sessions better.
Yes, and don't forget that next week we have a session looking at user-generated content at platforms. We have Paul Nunn from Super Awesome looking at what they are learning from their platform Pock. And we also have a surprise guest that we will be announcing very shortly.
Finally, obviously, if you need any marketing agencies, please do let us know. And obviously, an enormous thank you to our panelists today. Thank you so much, Jo, Leon, and Benny. Genuinely, I've learned a lot from this session myself, so I do hope our participants have as well. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. We come back next Tuesday, same timing. So we've seen what education outside of home, or what we say it's EOS, that it's gaining power in the society. So let's see what user-generated content platforms give us. So remember, we cannot predict the future, but we can create it. Thank you so much.